Welcome to Biochemistry Unfolded, from atoms to algorithms, an online podcast on the topic of biochemistry and biophysics. Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Biochemistry Unfolded, from atoms to algorithms. And so today, I'd like to talk about something very important because humanity, or society, global society, is currently in the midst of a major revolution, and that's the artificial intelligence and machine learning revolution. Over the past 5 years or so, maybe it's moving on a decade already, but probably half a decade. Artificial intelligence, we've seen the rise of AlphaFold, we've seen ChatGPT, Grok. There's a whole bunch of, it seems like every app, even Photoshop, and our search engines are AI enabled today. And I think if you are familiar with using AI, you're going to be ahead of the curve. But if you're not familiar and you let it kind of dominate you, then we're going to have a hard time, right? And so we want to talk about the responsible use of artificial intelligence and the productive usage of AI. Because I've kind of seen in just the past year, it seems like we've almost lost our minds with AI. I've seen a lot of people start to take advantage of it. And for example, if you've got a small child and they're facing a medical emergency, I've seen parents, instead of taking that child to the emergency room, which would be naturally the common sense approach, I've seen a lot of parents ask ChatGPT, what should I do? And I'm like, no, take your child to the ER, seek medical attention first. While you're waiting for the ER, then maybe use ChatGPT if you want to learn more about a particular condition or a particular state. I've seen students take AI for granted. It's like, I think a lot of students may have even lost the ability to take notes because they're just letting AI, record the lectures for them, or you upload a copy of all the notes that have been taken, that have been submitted online, and you let AI kind of sort through all those. And a lot of this is lacking basic critical thinking skills. So in a way, AI is very powerful, but it's also taking away our ability to critically analyze things and critically look at certain things. And so that can be fairly dangerous. We don't want AI to dominate what we do in our daily lives, but we want to use AI in a responsible way, and we want to use AI to improve our situation, but not take over our jobs, right? I think one of the things I've seen is a lot of Gen Z is applying for jobs, and they're using AI to apply for all these jobs as much as they can, and then the companies are also using AI to scan all those resumes. And what's happening is a lot of people are not getting hired the same way you would think. So I think we need to consider the use of AI properly when we're looking for jobs and when we're looking to get that first position after college or school and whatnot. So I think we need to consider all these implications of responsible AI. Now, if we look at the pharmaceutical industry and drug discovery, AI is the pharmaceutical industry has gone head on into AI. And obviously in the pharmaceutical industry, here's an area where that you need to conduct very rigorous research into drug compounds before they get approved, because basically you're looking at compounds that you're going to put into people to have a measurable pharmacological response. And you also need to consider the issues of safety and efficacy so that we don't start killing people. That would be a bad thing. And so you need an enormous amount of data. And traditionally, drug discovery has taken anywhere between 10 and 15 years of research just for one drug on the market. And it usually costs on the order of like $1.5 to $2 billion, and that's billion with a B. Now, can AI speed this process up? Can we look at different applications specifically, like disease identification and diagnosis, drug discovery, even early phase drug discovery, optimization of clinical trials, and improving manufacturing efficacy? These are all things that we can consider. And we have an enormous amount of data, right? AI tools are particularly useful for rapidly analyzing large data sets of chemical compounds, biological interactions, and even disease mechanisms. We can also look at what drugs that are particularly useful for one disease and think about how that might be repurposed, right? So, for example, aspirin's a good example of that. Aspirin is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug useful for treating general pain relief as a non-opioid analgesic. But it was also found to have blood thinning properties, and it's commonly used as a blood thinner to reduce the risk of stroke. Ozempic is another one that was originally used for diabetes management, but then they found it might be useful as a good weight loss drug. So AI can help us find and analyze when we come up with one drug for one condition, how can we repurpose that drug and maybe use it for something else? AI can help us analyze that as well too. So AI is going to be very, very useful to the pharma industry and the drug discovery industry in the not so distant future. It already is, as a matter of fact. So we need to use this AI tools very responsibly. Now, as with any technology, there are weaknesses, and many of the mistakes that people make with AI come down to a misunderstanding of what it can and cannot do, or they fail to use AI responsibly. The biggest mistakes that people make when using AI often include an over-reliance and a lack of critical review. So that might be involved in accepting AI output without verification, ignoring ethical considerations such as bias and privacy, as well as just poor prompting, not giving the AI adequate instructions, and then that leads to poor results and a poor idea later on, that it gives you bad information. Other significant errors also involve misunderstanding AI's limitations. And one of the things we commonly see are what's called AI hallucinations, where the results from AI lack common sense. And so this comes from failing to treat AI as a tool, and instead it's more of a strategy. And then you neglect to consider data quality, as the AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on, right? So we need to kind of think about how to manage all this. For example, with AlphaFold will give you 5 predictions of the structure of a particular protein. I've seen a lot of scientists, particularly in their early career, scientists, that will look at AI and they'll come up with AlphaFold and they'll just look at the first structure and say, that must be correct. AI is right. Well, let's not forget that AI gives you 5 structures. And all of those are plausible. All of those have a certain percentage of confidence, confidence scores, PLDDT scores, if you will. And so we need to look at everything and then compare that to biological data and think about what the most plausible structure is based on what the AI is output, because it may not be the first structure that is the best. It may be the fourth or the fifth structure that is actually the most biologically relevant prediction as well. So if we kind of look at some of these things, I've come up with a list of 10 of the biggest mistakes humans make using AI. And in no particular order, I didn't really order these out or anything, but let's just kind of look. Now, the first one here that I came up with is treating AI as infallible. And so often a lot of people just assume AI always gives the correct answers, right? And in fact, based on the training set and based on the data, it's only as good as the data you put into it. So you can actually have a lot of errors and hallucinations. For example, if you have AI generating an image, it may give you an image of a person with 6 fingers, not 5. And, if you're trying to predict text on there, the text may come out as complete gibberish. We often see this in social media posts. And so there's often an over-reliance instead of co-creation. And so we use AI as a shortcut rather than as a strategic partner. And this can often lead to poor quality output. And many people have unrealistic expectations of what AI can do. It's a very powerful tool, but it's not just this magic wand, right? Magic wand, I like that. So, no, it's not a magic wand. It does have limitations. You're trying to use AI to predict certain things, and it's basically trying to imitate what the human brain actually does, right? But it often lacks common sense, and it may lack basic emotional intelligence, right? We don't have an emotion chip like Data had on Star Trek, right? So there are certain limitations with that AI. Now, the second biggest mistake we see is often we fail to verify outputs in AI. And so we don't double check AI results. I see a lot of students doing this especially, and we have blind trust in the AI that says, oh, I asked AI the question, it must be correct. We think AI is some kind of an Albert Einstein, if you will. And this can be very dangerous, especially in medicine and pharma, but also if we're using this in finance and even just in education in general. Because if we don't critically analyze the output from an AI and we just trust that it's correct, it may not be correct. Well, that's almost like trusting that an individual is correct. And we always want to second guess the AI to say, is that actually correct? Use our own critical thinking skills to actually say, hey, is this the correct answer? So we always want to verify, and we always want to consider what the AI is actually giving to us. The third biggest mistake is using AI without context or domain knowledge. And so AI can sound authoritative, but it lacks true understanding. And without the human subject expertise, outputs can often be misinterpreted or misapplied. So that's also a major factor in artificial intelligence. Number 4 is ignoring data bias. AI reflects the data that was trained on. If the data is biased or incomplete, then that AI output will also be biased and incomplete. It's kind of like the old acronym GIGO, right? That's been kind of common in the computer industry for many years. Garbage in, garbage out. If you feed an AI garbage or inaccurate data, the AI will get confused and it will not know how to interpret the results, right? Let's consider the science fiction movie 2001 A Space Odyssey. And in that movie, that featured an artificially intelligent computer on the Discovery, HAL 9000. And HAL 9000 was a very advanced computer. Of course, it was fictional. And but it was in the movie, it was capable of carrying out the entire mission in the event that all of the astronauts were, you know, um, incapacitated, for example. And well, the the people in charge of the Discovery mission ended up, and I think by 2010 they found that the instructions that were given to HAL 9000, it was given bad data and incorrect, inaccurate data. And HAL 9000 did its best to interpret those results, which in this case, HAL 9000 basically went crazy and decided to kill the crew and carry out the mission on its own. So that led to a major problem in the movie. That was a major plot element of 2001, The Space Odyssey, and even 2010, the next movie as well. So we can learn a lot just from Hollywood. I think Stanley Kubrick was way ahead of his time in kind of giving us some AI problems that we should deal with, right? So that's something to consider. Now, number 5, the fifth major issue with artificial intelligence, the major mistake, over-automating decision making. And so often we see a lot of people handing over way too much control to AI in processes that require judgment, empathy, and ethics, such as in hiring, sentencing, making medical diagnoses. We ask AI what the solution is, and we're giving them a lot of control. I think we see this in the legal industry because AI, it basically has the training, the same training as an attorney. But now what we're seeing in the legal industry is that a lot of judges will look at this AI from the AI results that lawyers are bringing forth to the court and saying this is completely wrong, and that's a total misinterpretation of the law. And let me tell you, if you're a lawyer and you're giving a judge inaccurate information, trying to pass that off as fact, that judge is not going to be too happy with you. And so we need to have more accountability and control and retain that accountability ourselves, but use AI to make things a little bit more rapidly and assist in our decision making, but not take over our decision making, right? So we need to maintain that ultimate control instead of handing it over to the AI. That's also how you get something like Skynet taking over as well, which would be very bad, right? And we don't want to treat AI as a one-time project rather than an ongoing process. And we don't want to not have clear objectives. We want to always maintain clear objectives in everything we do, and we need to maintain that control. Number 6 is misunderstanding limitations. So often a lot of users will assume that AI thinks just like humans or understands context the way people do. And really it doesn't. We often think that that is, but it will actually recognize patterns and probabilities and base its output based on that. So it's not exactly the same way. It's not exactly thinking the exact same way as a human. It's still a computer and it's still thinking very logically. So we need to think about that as well. Number 7, poorly defining tasks or prompts. And so this is very important. We always want to consider the instructions that we type into the prompt in ChatGPT or whatever AI we give it. We always want to consider and make sure that we're giving the AI proper instructions, because if we have ambiguous instructions, that's going to lead to irrelevant or misleading outputs. Again, garbage in, garbage out. If we have lack of specificity and context, this can confuse AI models, and we're going to get irrelevant and inaccurate responses. And if we ignore advanced features and refinement, then that also will lead to subpar results as well. Number 8, neglecting privacy and security. This is kind of a big one because most of these AI models, the computer itself is in the cloud, if you will. Now, sometimes you can download like AlphaFold. You can actually download all the instruction code and execute it on your own personal, or I guess if you have a cluster, it probably would be a little bit faster. So you can certainly do that. But when we're using major AI models such as ChatGPT or Grok, one of those, we're executing these on a cluster that is up in the cloud and that's shared by thousands of users. And when we feed data into these systems, we also need to consider that we're not retaining that data on our own computer. We're sending that data into the cloud. And you want to consider the privacy policy and read that very carefully to see what they're doing with that data. Because often what AI models will do is any input you give the AI, it'll then use that to train its own data set, right? And so it'll use the data you input to it to improve its own model and improve the models from other people. This gets very important for certain federal laws involving privacy, such as in education, the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, as well as the healthcare information HIPAA laws, right? HIPAA. These are very important because if you give AI patient data, which is proprietary, and you feed some name information or educational data, that can be used to train the AI, and then the AI has access to that same information, and you're sharing, it's almost like sharing that information with another person that may not be authorized to use that information. And so that would actually be a violation of the law, because you're sharing that information without the consent of the individual. So we want to be very careful with any data that we send to AI models. Sensitive data, we want to make sure and have specific safeguards to avoid exposing personal and proprietary information. Even you may not think, but if you're in a company, let's say you're working for Big Pharma, and you want to share, you want to use a data set from your company's database to have the AI look at all that data and give you some possible explanations of that. Well, if that's a proprietary company database, the company may not want that data to get out, and so that could be a violation of your company's policies to put that data into the hands of an AI which hasn't been authorized by the company. So that can be a big thing as well too. So we want to make sure privacy and security is very important. Number 9, failing to consider unintended consequences. So here, deploying AI without anticipating how it affects jobs, misinformation, or social systems can also backfire. So we want to make sure and retain that control over our data and consider how using that data is going to impact things down the road. So that's a very important consideration. And number 10 is using AI as a replacement instead of a tool. So perhaps the biggest mistake in treating AI as a substitute, it's treating AI as a substitute for human intelligence, creativity, or responsibility, as opposed to as an assistant that augments them, right? So I see this a lot on social media. I see AI art is all over social media. We see a lot of AI videos on YouTube and TikTok. TikTok is almost becoming just a massive amount of garbage these days because there's AI bots that are looking at some of the top content creators on TikTok, and then they're creating AI versions of that individual, putting words into their mouth, and then they create a fake account, hundreds of fake accounts, and you can tell they're fake because they have names like user, and then there's like 10 numbers after it, or a random assortment of letters and numbers. And then they get other AI bots to follow them to make it look like they have some followers. And it's complete garbage, right? And, this isn't real creativity, right? This is AI bots coming up with garbage that we're putting on social media. Same thing with image creation tools. And we're doing a disservice to true artists and content creators. People want to, enjoy that art. People produce art so that other people can enjoy it, and it's very, it's a common thing that we like to see. It's motivating to us when we share our artwork and our content with the internet. But then we don't want to see some AI just copy it and they can churn this out faster than we can create it, right? We want to create that. We want to retain that creativity. We want to use our own intelligence, but we do want to see AI being used responsibly, and it can augment our own creativity. For example, I like to do photography, and I've taken some photos, mainly of like beaches or I think Haystack Rock, for example. And you take a photo and there's like 100 people on the beach, and you want to remove the people. So you can use Photoshop AI to circle those people and take that out, and then you've got a picture of whatever your photo is without all the people. That would be responsible because you still took the original photo. You're just getting rid of something undesirable in that photo to make it more appealing. You're still retaining the creativity and that control over that, right? So that's also one of the biggest things we want to consider. So the bottom line here, perhaps the most common mistake is overestimating what AI is and underestimating what AI is not. And so successful use is going to require human oversight, critical thinking, as well as ethical considerations as well. So that's basically where we are with AI. There's some of the biggest mistakes we make with AI. AI art is one of the biggest areas, and I think it's probably a very big debated area. We've kind of seen the term AI slop, if you will, and AI hallucinations. And so that phrase, AI slop, that really captures the frustration a lot of people, especially on social media, feel with how much low effort content is just flooding all of our social media spaces. Now, some of this can be good. There are a few pros, but it's also a lot of cons as well too. So, for example, some of the good things, accessibility. Anyone can create images without needing years of training in traditional art, and so this does democratize creative self-expression. AI can also generate many variations very quickly. And so this can help brainstorm concepts and even spark further inspiration. So if you're an artist and you kind of get that brain fart, if you will, you can use AI to kind of get past that, or even writer's block if you're an author and you're having a hard time coming up with the next paragraph or a transition paragraph. You can use AI to get past that writer's block, if you will. It is also a new creative medium, and so it's not just a tool for imitation. It can create novel aesthetics and hybrid styles that we really have never seen before, and then artists can then use this to try and imitate that and make better things as well. And it's also useful for collaboration as well. So artists can use AI like a sketch partner, and so this involves rapidly prototyping ideas before refining them with your own human skill. Right? So artists can use AI art in a responsible manner. We also see a reduction in cost. And this is very useful in the advertising industry, for example. So small businesses and educators and even individuals can access high quality visuals without hiring an expensive design team, which that gets fairly expensive. And, obviously, if you're kind of in a nonprofit and you're coming up with something to advertise a particular event, you can use AI to come up with a couple of prototypes and kind of look at that. So that's certainly fairly useful, right? Now, the major cons, first of all, copyright. Under U.S. copyright law, I'm not sure how this applies in other countries, but I know in the United States, copyright only applies to human-generated content. So that means that anything that's generated with AI is not copyrightable. That means it can be used freely without attribution and without, you don't have to worry about, getting sued for it or anything like that. It's not copyrighted. So again, this also kind of raises some ethical and legal questions as well. Obviously, if you want your art to be copyrighted and retain that creative control over it, don't use AI. Because it cannot be copyrighted. The other major con is it kind of devalues human labor. And obviously, human art, that can be fairly expensive. I mean, artists do spend a lot of time and effort into creating their artwork. And so we want to consider the effort that's put into the art. And if we just use AI to create our own stuff very quickly, well, then that could undercut the work that the artists put in and spend their time on there. And so this cheapens the art. And so it becomes cheap AI art. And if you just flood the market with that the skilled professionals kind of ultimately lose out from that. Number 3 are issues with quality issues. A lot of AI art is just a low effort and it's mass produced and is very formulaic. And so this floods social media feeds with just soulless content. And it's just repetitive. And after time, if you see too much of this, it just gets old. And we've seen the same stuff over and over again. And we kind of want to see new things, right? There's also a lack of intentionality. And so AI doesn't create with meaning or lived experience or even a cultural context. It imitates patterns, right? And so to make something with actual cultural context and to have that truly human experience, that's true artistry. That's true art. And AI has not gotten to that point yet. It can generate things really quickly, but it doesn't have the human experience. It doesn't have that human touch. And of course, we also have an ethical and a social impact, right? So AI art can fuel misinformation, such as fake photos. We're seeing this overwhelm online communities, especially on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and even on YouTube here. I think YouTube has even gotten in and tried to control it a little bit better than TikTok has, but it's still very difficult difficult to control, just because it's so much and it's just so rapid. It gets out there. And so it's difficult to distinguish genuine from synthetic creativity. So that becomes a major issue. So the flood of AI-generated content online, it often feels like spam in the early days, or even, well, we still have a problem with spam and email, or even stock photography replacing authentic visuals. So the problem isn't the technology itself, it's the overuse without properly curating that content. So for example, when people post endless AI-generated images without thought, this clogs feeds with visual noise. And that can devalue good AI-assisted art where artists genuinely use the tool creatively. Over time, audiences are going to tune out and even mistrust digital imagery altogether. And we're also seeing that a lot because a lot of people they're tuning out of social media very rapidly. And of course, not only just with AI art and Slop and all that stuff, but also just the overindulgence in politics online, which is getting rather old too. So in short, AI art has an enormous potential when it's used intentionally and responsibly. However, what we're seeing now on social media is mostly quantity over quality. And so we have an arms race of algorithms chasing attention. So we want to be very careful with that. So I'm going to close with what I call the 10 commandments of AI use. And so these are 10 things that we should come up with and we should consider when we're using artificial intelligence, whether we're using that to design new drugs, or we're using that to augment our art, or we're using AI as an educational tool. So the 10 commandments of AI use. Number 1, thou shalt not treat AI as infallible. Always question, verify, and confirm the output before trusting it. Number 2, thou shalt check thy sources. Never accept AI's claims without fact-checking against reliable references. Number 3, thou shalt provide clear instructions. Good prompts lead to good answers. Vague prompts lead to garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. Number 4, thou shalt keep human judgment supreme. Use AI to assist, not replace, human reasoning, empathy, or ethics. Number 5, thou shalt guard privacy and data. This should almost be number 1, actually. Never feed sensitive, personal, or confidential information into unsafe AI systems. There could be legal consequences for this. There could also be financial consequences. And so make sure and consider the privacy of your data, right? Number 6, thou shalt recognize bias in data. Remember, if bias lives in the training, bias will live in the output. And always consider what that output is, and always question and use your own critical thinking skills to properly analyze that. Number 7, thou shalt know AI's limits. AI does not think or understand like humans. It predicts patterns. So it's very logical in that regard. It does things very fast, but it lacks that emotion, right? It lacks the human's own intuition. It doesn't have Data's emotion chip, as in Star Trek. Number 8, thou shalt anticipate consequences. And so before deploying AI in your work, consider the social, ethical, and unintended impacts of that. Number 9, thou shalt remain transparent. Be honest when AI has been used in your work, projects, and research. So if you use AI, then just be honest about that. And number 10, thou shalt use AI to empower and not replace. Treat AI as a tool to extend creativity, insight, and problem solving, and not as a crutch for avoiding them. So I hope these 10 rules, these 10 commandments of AI, help us guide our own use of artificial intelligence. Again, I'm not saying don't use AI, because that would be irresponsible. But we do want to remember, kind of like what Spider-Man's grandfather said in the Spider-Man series. And this goes to the fact that AI is a great power that we've been given, that we've actually developed. Humans haven't really been given it. We've developed AI. And it is a great power. And we want to remember that with great power comes great responsibility. And it's very important to use that AI responsibly so that we can use AI to improve the human condition and the human experience, and not let AI completely take over, or else we're going to be out of the job, and that would be a bad thing, right? So that's my thoughts on artificial intelligence and how to use that responsibly. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Biochemistry Unfolded, from atoms to algorithms. And so if you like this, go ahead and hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell icon as well. And then you'll be informed and constantly informed of when we post new content as well. If you have some more thoughts on your own use of AI, leave them in the comments down below. And then we can share that with other people that are watching these, and that is very useful. So until then, I will bid you farewell until the next episode. Thank you for watching. You have been listening to Biochemistry Unfolded, from atoms to algorithms. Thank you for watching. We will see you again in the next video.